Well, good afternoon and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for Community Health Foundation's Break for Health session. Today, we're going to talk about the joys and challenges of aging. And I first want to take a minute to recognize our partners in putting this series together and this session in particular. Our moderator is Nettie Carter-Smith with the Rocking Horse Center, and we sure appreciate all of her commitment to the Break for Health series. And in the background, we've had such fantastic technical assistance from Alex Miller from Shiftology. And we're just thrilled to be able to present this series to the community. I'd like to take a minute to just talk about some of the tools that you can use during this webinar. If you aren't familiar with Zoom webinars, they're a little bit different from just Zoom meetings. So you will not be able to chat as an attendee. That function is turned off. But what you will do in order to ask questions is to click on the Q&A button. And then those questions will pop up and we will do our best to ask our panelists to respond to your question if they can. Also, you'll notice that at the bottom of your screen, you might see that the text or the transcript of what we're saying is showing up as we speak. If that's at all bothersome to you, you can click on the little button CC above where it says live transcript, and there's an option there for you to hide the subtitle. But I do think it can be helpful if anybody wants to be sure that they're hearing things correctly, you can keep that transcript going. So I'd really love to take a moment to just introduce Nettie. And we have some poll questions that you'll see pop up on your screen throughout this session. And Nettie, if you'd like to sort of describe this first poll question, and we can get started with that.
Sure. So you see the poll questions. Let me just say hello. Welcome, everybody. It's Wednesday. It's hump day. Do you believe we're halfway through February? It's Heart Health Month, but it's also Black History Month. So just want to say kudos to those two things that we celebrate in the month of February. We've got a great panel of experts today, some of Springfield's finest, who are also going to help answer some of these questions. So take a few minutes, answer these poll questions. The first one, you can select one single choice. And then the second question, I'm actually going to pose to the panelists. So take about 5 more seconds to answer those, and then we'll get the results. Which of the following best describes you? That's the first one. The second one, in general, when do you think old age begins? Boy, this is a tough question. Tough. Okay, Alex, the man behind the curtain, what are the results? Okay, number 1, it looks like 47%, and you can see that. Person who provides care for an elderly person or relative. Okay. Question 2, tricky one. When do you think old age begins? Well, I'm going to defer that question to our panelists. Thank you so much, Alex. I'm going to start with Michelle. Michelle, can you introduce yourself and answer poll question number 2?
Yes, I sure can. I am Michelle Hemphill, and I am the marketing director and PR person for Villa Springfield, which we are a short-term rehab and long-term care nursing facility. And number 2, when does old age begin? I'd like to say 90.
Okay, great answer. Thank you. Next up, we have Jane.
Good afternoon. My name is Jane Eccles. I'm in Caring Services Department at United Senior Services. And when we talk about caregiving, I had been a professional caregiver for over 20 years as a social worker. And then I became a caregiver to my parents. And when I thought I knew everything, I found out with my parents that I didn't know nearly as much as what I thought I did. So I've kind of learned from the school of hard knocks. As far as getting old, I'm of the generation that you were old when you hit 30. So after age 30, it's just been a huge adventure. So that is, thank you.
Thanks. I'm in trouble. Next up, Andy. Andy.
Hello, my name's Andy Elder. I'm a local general practice attorney here in Springfield, primarily working in probate and estate planning matters, including power of attorney type issues. As far as when does old age start, I like to push that out farther and farther as I age myself, but sometimes it depends on how I feel in the morning when I get up. But unfortunately, we see issues arise younger than we really wish, as 65 or even younger sometimes. It all depends on the person. So.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. Next up, we have Sarah Lemon and Daryl Kitchen.
My name is Daryl Kitchen, and I think that the answer is to that is difficult, because I think that one of the things that's important is to know that when we have the blessing of good physical and mental health, that perhaps there's never a point at which we would feel old. I think it's attitudinal. Clearly, if you're challenged with those limitations of physical and mental health, it can come on much earlier, not unlike what Andy referred to a few minutes ago. So I'm hoping and I'm thinking that the age process is one that can be very promising, and there's no particular threshold. We just have to keep ourselves healthy.
Hi there, I'm Sarah Lemon. I work for Springfield City School District as the Business Outreach Coordinator. I'm also a board member for United Senior Service Center. Well, since I'm here with my dad, I should be really careful about what I say as far as what is old age, right? So how old are you actually?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, my children would say that I am old. However, I feel as if I am young. But I would agree with kind of what our panel's saying here. Age is just a number. And the older I get, I like to push that age off as thinking what is deemed old. So
I agree. I'm with you, Sarah.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. So last but not least, actually, I think that this is probably the best perspective that we can get. We are honored to have Mike and his mother, Mrs. Marshall, with us. And no one on the panel shared their age, which is fine. But I'm sure that Mrs. Marshall has something to say about that. So, Mike, do you want to introduce yourself first?
My name is Mike Marshall. I'm a retired sales manager for Altria Corporation. And in talking about old age, I guess it's hard for me because my mom is still young to me. And once she tells you how old she is, you'll realize that. But I agree with some of the other panelists that you're as old as you feel you are. And I don't think you can really put a number on it. A lot of people feel like the one panelist said, your health means a lot. So, if you have good mental health and physical health, it really means a lot. So age is just a number. So I'll let my mom speak to that.
When I think of age, I go back when I was much younger. So now that I'm over 100, I thought maybe 90 would be old age to me because I feel physically well and I have walking exercise and I do various activities here at Oakwood. So I'm leaning toward 95.
Okay. So don't keep us in suspense, Mrs. Marshall. How old are you?
101.
101. I'm going to say a little bit louder for the people in the back so that they can hear that. She's a blessing. She is a blessing.
I have been 101.
101. Mrs. Marshall talked about some of the activities that she's involved in at Oakwood. Can we talk about the resources that are available in Clark County, in our community, to assist our older community? We talk a little bit about that. How about Michelle or Jane? You can start.
Thank you, Natty. Yes, since I'm representing United Senior Services, I would like if we could show that slide of some of the services that United Senior Services offered. And Daryl had mentioned about, keeping yourself healthy and keeping yourself young. And so we offer lots of activities for the individual, older adult, benefits counseling. You can see it on the screen, caring services, health outreach, home modifications, in-home services, meal services, all kinds of recreation, all kinds of adult education. We offer transportation, travel programs, lots of volunteer opportunities. So you can see that we offer a broad range of things for the individual to come and do. As far as the caregiver, the department that I'm in is the caregiving services. We have in-home services. We have meal delivery, grocery delivery, homemaker services. I think I said the Meals on Wheels. So lots of services for caregivers. And in addition to having the caregivers come in for support groups and for meeting with staff to help them come up with a plan to care for their older adult that they're caring for.
So I have to ask the question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jane. So how old do I have to be to get involved with United Senior Services? Is there a specific age?
If you're coming for the recreation program, 55 and over, and we looked at your would be in living in Clark County. However, we do open the services to other counties as well. There's a membership involved. But if you're looking for specific services, then we're looking at age 60 and over. And that's simply due to the funding that we get, that we are looking for 60 and over.
Okay.
Does that help?
It does.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, and I think the previous slide was talking about our mission, and our entire mission is to serve older adults by offering quality services that promote active, involved lifestyles. So that's what we want for our citizens in Clark County to participate in. So you're welcome to call. We'll have a resource page coming up in a little bit, probably towards the end of the program, that will have our my contact information, as well as contact information for United Senior Services. But, Daryl hit the nail on the head when he said, staying involved in your community, friendships. Somebody else had talked about positivity, being around other people, being engaged. And I think Alice is going to mention this a little bit later too, but, being engaged with people, talking with people, being a part of a community, and that positivity all works. So even if our bodies give out on us, which they sometimes do at any age, by having that engagement, that socialization can help us get through that.
Thank you. Daryl, Sarah, were you going to say something?
Well, I would just add something to what Jane said earlier. The question regarded the age threshold for access to United Senior Services, but I can share with you that I have a mother who's doing quite well. She's approaching 99, and she is a resident in assisted care at Wooded Glen. And that was a process that was very difficult. It started several years ago, and it was not easy. The first call that I made was to Maureen Fagans at United Senior Services. That began a process of better understanding what was available. It also began a process of having in-home assessment and giving me advice from a professional perspective that I couldn't get from others.
Yes, thank you, Daryl. Yes, because we have a whole team here that can meet with the family. You're welcome to come to the center, but we also do come to the home and help you come up with a plan to get the needed services that are available for you in the community. and how to make those. And sometimes I appreciated your terminology that it's a process. It certainly is. And when people aren't familiar with the process or familiar with, the steps that need to be taken, we can help people walk through those steps with you to get whatever it is that might be needed.
That's good. It's good to know. Yes. Michelle, can you add your piece just in terms of where you're at and how that works with caregivers?
Sure. We do a lot of short-term rehab, which is usually due to accident, an illness, something if people are weak and need to build up their strength. You can come to a place like Villa Springfield for a short-term rehab, and then go home. Our goal is always to send everybody home and to the level that they were at before they came to us from the hospital is usually what happens. We also do outpatient therapy. And what people don't know is if you're finding that your balance is off a little bit, or if you don't have as much energy and you've been to your medical doctor and medically you're doing well, you can always ask to go to therapy. And you can choose just about, 50 different places in town to do that. And it would be outpatient therapy, but don't hesitate to do it. Your insurance and your Medicare covers it. It's a benefit you deserve. And sometimes 6 weeks of therapy gets you back on track again to where you don't feel so off balance and keeps fall prevention from, keeps falls from happening and things like that. The other thing I would add is the Springfield community and in Clark County, we have so much that is available for seniors to be involved with. Mind, body, and soul. We have yoga, we have exercise class, you've got United Senior Services, junior achievement. You can volunteer in the classroom, which we have a lot of seniors who do that, who love working with the kids from kindergarten to seniors in high school. There's the art center. You can go and volunteer at the KUS. There is so much activity after you retire that all these organizations can keep you busier than you were before. So always reach out. The senior center is a good resource. We're all good resources. You can call any of us to help you find the passion that you want and the area that you want to be involved with, from a walking club to a biking club to all kinds of stuff.
That's great, because there was a question.
Can I jump in just really quick with my quick
Sure.
example? So I know I'm not a panelist, but I'll share that my father's 95 and he lives at Oakwood as well as Mrs. Marshall. And he keeps himself really healthy by going out for walks every day. He still plays chess. He uses his tablet to play chess multiple times a day. And then Mrs. Marshall, you probably know that he also plays piano. Yeah. And he does that once or twice a week in the lobby over there at Oakwood. And I know that the folks who live there appreciate it. And it helps keep him mentally sharp. And he is, for 95 years old, he's a pretty good physical specimen.
Did you want to add something, Mrs. Marshall?
Beautiful piano playing. Everyone looks forward to his piano concerts in the afternoon.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, that I'm so glad that we're having this conversation, because that was one of the questions that one of the participants asked. Specifically, they said that they were really active in their younger age, and then as they've gotten older, they're not as active. So they wanted to know what were the resources. So I think it's great. And maybe what we can even do is just kind of put a couple of other places in the chat for the group so that people can see those resources. I just think that would be helpful. Michelle mentioned the walking and then other activities with community members and organizations that I think would be really good. So. Good stuff.
So Nettie, could I also add that United Senior Services does have a volunteer program, an RSVP program. So if you're interested in volunteering, you kind of know where your strengths are, but you don't know what in the community or where to go to volunteer. We have excellent people here that can help guide you in making some of those decisions and trying out some new volunteer activities and maybe some new learning as well.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So we've talked about Mrs. Marshall is at Oakwood. Daryl's mom is at Wood Glen. Is that right? Yes. Is there, let's shift. So how do when should a caregiver ask for help? Let's say maybe they're living alone, or they're not in assisted living. When should they ask for help? When's a good time?
So my philosophy is that if you're asking the question, it might be the time to start looking for some answers. And now with so many, we've learned about all the activities and things to get engaged in the community about. We have probably just as many activities for helping and assisting the caregiver. But I would ask the caregiver to think of caregiving a little bit differently, to think of asking for care, asking for assistance and help before you need it, so that when you need it, you've got things in place and it's not abrupt and it's not something brand new that your loved one would have to get used to. So getting services in early, often, heavy at the beginning, you can always pull back, but it's a lot harder to add it on as you go along. So getting care early is tremendous and very important. And then building your care team from that, building with family, building with friends, building with professionals, telling people of your needs and getting that set up. Because we all know that families get burned out very quickly. So having other people in to help the family along from the very beginning is very much needed.
Mike and Sarah and Daryl, do you care to add anything to that?
I'd like to add just the fact with my mom, she can even verify this. We wanted to get her into a independent living facility earlier, and she would not go. But so this is not going to be a very easy task for some people, but you have to be able to explain to them that it's going to really be better for them in the long run. And I think today, mom's going on her 6th year here at Oakwood. And if she had to do it over again, she probably would have came 5 or 6 years earlier. And mainly because first of all, she's met so many more new friends, which is very hard to do when you're older because you're not getting around as much. She's able to eat at a fairly healthy diet, where as you get older, you're not really able to do that, especially if you're living alone. A lot of times you don't want to cook for one. And the fact that they have the activities. I know we've already discussed that part, but I think with my mom, the fact that she's had the very many activities that she's always been involved in, things like bowling or going to a place called Curves back in the day, the fitness center, and she walks here. And just to keep your mind and your body stimulated, I think these type facilities really help in the long run. And I think she would agree that she was really happy to be here and enjoys her time here.
I would just add, the conversations that I have with people is a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, you have to decide, do you want to be your family member's caregiver, or do you want to be their spouse or their daughter or their nephew? That's a big choice between the two. The other thing is every facility offers respite care. You can even do it in the independent and in the assisted living. So if you have somebody who doesn't want to go, because I'll be one of those people, offer respite for a week or two. Just test the waters. Don't make them sign a big long contract saying you're stuck here and that you're leaving them, because that's the fear. A building like ours that doesn't offer assisted living, the fear is you come to a nursing home and that's the end of that. And it's not that way anymore, but everybody offers respite, and it's a good time to try to see if this is the level of care you need, and just test the waters and see how you acclimate to all that. So take advantage of that also.
I think something else that I would like to add, going through this process with my grandmother, trying to be the caregiver for my dad and my mom in a sense, and I won't get emotional, but so my mom and dad having to take on those types of responsibilities and working with just different people in the community to help them through that process, I then would see what my dad and my mom are going through. So I had to step up to be able to help, my dad at home and mom, and let him know, hey, it's okay. We got great resources here in the community. Grandma's doing great. She's happy. She's like Alice, doing lots of fun things and enjoying, her time. But for me as a daughter to be able to be a caregiver in a sense, for my dad and my mom. So.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, that is tough. I tell you, I have some parents that are maturing. They're mature, and it's funny. I just had a conversation with my mom, and her thought was, well, if something ever happens to your father and I'm here, I just don't want you to put me away. And there I am. So, I think that it is helpful that we do have those conversations, and, that is an opportunity. We are so fortunate that we're resource rich here in Clark County. So we do have options. Sarah, you're absolutely right. And that we're able to reach out to try to see what's going to be the best fit, if that's the direction that you go. Jane, Michelle mentioned, do you want to be a daughter, or do you want to be an aunt, uncle, or a caregiver? Because that's a tough balance. That is tough. Andy, we haven't heard from you yet, but I just want to get you, maybe to comment a little bit, just in terms of, obviously in your role and what you do, how are you able to navigate some of that with families that you work with?
Well, don't get me started, but I like the term that someone used, instead of aging, we're maturing, which is good, and we all do at different rates. But and the important thing is not just for caregivers, but for those of us as we age, that we should do our part in setting up the plan as we would like it to be. And that's where you get a chance through wills and power of attorneys, where you can designate who you would want to step in if the time should come where you need the help. I like to tell people that, if they ask, when do you need these forms? Who knows? Because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. If we get hit by a bus and get disabled, or we mature up to 120 and then before we need anything. So, but put the documents in place and let them grow old and dusty while you go out and live until they're needed. So that's kind of my approach, because if you don't, then when the time comes, and if we should become incapacitated for whatever reason, or not competent to make the decisions ourselves, then we're kind of throwing it in the lap of some or family members who may or may not want to be involved, or potentially the court, which happens more than we'd like, but it does. So
right. Okay. Well, this leads us, let's slide into our second group of poll questions, because there is a question in the chat that we can actually kind of talk about. And I'm going to actually open it up with you again, Andy, just to kind of go through this. And again, all the panelists can answer the questions. Thank you, Mr. Chapman, for your question. We'll get to that. And I was just going to say, please feel free to put questions in the chat so we can answer that as a panel. Okay. The first question, which of the following plans do you have in place? Select all that apply. And then the second question, what worries you about growing old? And then again, select all of the ones that apply to you. We'll give you about 5 more seconds. 4, 3, no, I'm kidding. Okay, let's see the results. Okay, looks like more than half, 81% have a will, which is great. 50% and 50% have a POA and a living will. Yeah, and 31% the planned funeral. I'm trying to scroll that down. I apologize for my screen. Sometimes it just kind of acts like that. So I'm just going to click off and click back on. I'm back with not a twitch. How about that? What worries you about getting old? 81%, losing my memory or not recognizing the people I care about. I definitely understand that. And Andy, I'm going to flip this to you because the first question is from the chat. I need help assistance with help for my sister, whom I'm the guardian of. She has dementia, and where to get legal advice. So Jay Chapman is asking that. So if you want to take that, and then we can open it up, that'll be good.
Well, as far as that question, if she has dementia, that's a problem where it may be a little late, because at that point she's limited in what she can do as far as decisions of her own. It depends on the degree of the dementia, of course. But hopefully, my recommendation is, and I don't know if Alex wants to put up that slide, is just a few basic things that were listed there. Like the will, the healthcare power of attorney, the financial power of attorney, and the living will. Other than the will, these other three are for things that can help you manage things while you're still living. It doesn't mean you're giving up your right to do things yourself. You're just naming someone that can step in if the need should arise for various reasons. And the will comes into place, of course, if the will itself only comes into place if you actually should pass away. The goal of these is you set this up so you avoid the necessity of having to go to, or someone having to go to probate court to appoint a guardian if you're not competent enough to make the decisions of your own right, which may be the situation as we become older and get dementia and don't recognize our loved ones or our family. It doesn't mean that having these in place will solve every problem, but it's definitely makes it more probable than not that you'll be able, you as a maturing person, you'll be able to have things run the way you would like them to run. So I don't know if that helps or not.
Any other thoughts from any of the other panelists on that? I know Andy's the legal expert, but I'm not sure if any of you have had that experience. That
I can go on forever on any one of those, but I don't think you want to hear me that much.
The only thing I would add is a lot of people are proactive. A lot of people are living a lot longer. You need to make sure you update as you go along, because we have had families who have had certain people as POAs and they're either out of the picture or they've passed or something. So make sure you stay on top of it. I don't know, Andy would know better how often you should review it, but make sure it's current with the people and your wishes as you go along, because things change.
Right.
Right.
And make sure you know where they are, or the
Right.
family knows where they are.
Right.
Because many times people will say they've done them and they can't find them, or the family can't find them, and then that doesn't do us much good.
Right. That's good. I know we were talking about the question, talked about dementia, but for some people, they may not know. Can we talk a little bit about the symptoms or signs? I don't know if anyone has a family member that may be struggling with Alzheimer's or dementia. What are the signs?
So with dementia is kind of the umbrella term, and one type of dementia is Alzheimer's, and there's several different kinds. Alzheimer's is the most prevalent, so they kind of use them interchangeably. And when you're noticing with yourself or with others, you know that you're having trouble coming up with word find, you're having trouble remembering things, difficulty doing familiar tasks. You sometimes get a lot of calls after Thanksgiving and Christmas because, my mom or my grandmother always knew how to do this recipe. She never wrote it down. She always just, and then all of a sudden it's not tasting the same as it did the year before. So, and we start, kind of making this determination, oh, they must have Alzheimer's, they must have dementia. We have to step in, we have to do everything now and make decisions for them. Well, number one, there's a lot of other diseases and illnesses that we get where we get short-term memory loss, where we can't remember how to do the recipe, where we forget people's names. So the best advice is, rather than you trying to make that determination, go to the physician and have the physician make, because there's other diseases that present that same way, and make sure that we know what we're dealing with from the very beginning. Get a good evaluation, and they may send you out to a specialist, a neurologist or someone else, but that's fine. You're getting the information that you need. And again, just like we talked about, when you get care as early as possible, when you get these diagnoses as early as possible. You may have read that some of the medications for dementias and Alzheimer's aren't working, and they've pulled them off the market and this and that. But when they've gone back and studied them, what has happened is those medications only are helping people in the early stages. And so getting the medications early on in these diagnoses are much more important than we'll just wait and see, we'll wait and see. And then it progresses and gets worse. So my advice again is just, as early as possible when you're noticing some of these things, to get the doctor involved, get your medical team involved, so you know what you're dealing with, and then they can work with you on the best plan of care for your loved one.
Anyone else care to comment? Okay. So how can we, as caregivers, I understand that, some are in assisted living homes, but sometimes I know it gets a little anxious, maybe initially. How can we reduce stress as caregivers? What are some techniques and things that we can do so that we feel comfortable that the person we love, maybe they're still at home, or maybe they're in a facility, that we're not stressful, that we're not stressed. And I'll share this. So I am also fortunate. I have a grandmother who's 100 years old. She'll be 101 in June, which is a tremendous blessing. And she just recently lived by herself. My grandfather passed away about 7 years ago, and she lived by herself in her house for years. And I kid you not, 2 weeks before Christmas, she told her son, I'm ready to sell my house. She gave her car away. A month before that, I'm gonna click off and click back on because I got a twitch and I don't want to get you guys crazy. But she put her house on the market, and within the way the housing market is, and it's a beautiful house, it sold the same day. So she made that decision to move, and now she lives with her younger daughter, and who lives in Westchester. But I say all that to say, during this time, and even when she was by herself, it was stressful. And now that she's with her daughter, it's a little stressful for her and for us because she's always been independent. She's very independent. So how do you deal with stress? How do you deal with it?
So we know that 20% of the caregivers are age 65 and over. And the ones that are under 65 are probably working and doing caregiving. So you've got the stress. We've always heard that women, there's more women giving care than men, and that is changing. And I think the panel here is a testament to that with Daryl and Mike here as caregivers. More and more men are coming into the caregiving role too. So the first thing you can do is what you're already doing. So give yourself a pat on the back. You're researching resources within your community. And this and I think in another slide, we'll learn about the community resource finder that the Community Health Foundation puts out. All of these kinds of things have resources. If you can't find the book, if you can't find whatever, call United Senior Services, call a Community Health Foundation, call, people in the community and get those resources, because there's a lot more than what we can list and talk to you about in 1 hour. Michelle had mentioned about getting respite. We all get tired when you have your loved one in a facility, and Alice can attest to this. Every 8 hours, you've got fresh, rested recruits coming in to care for your loved one. When you're at home doing it by yourself 24/7, you're going to get burned out. So set limits, know what your limits are. If you can't do it, say you can't do it. If you need help, please ask for help. If there's nothing else, I can tell you, stand in front of the mirror tonight and say, I need help. I'm going to do this first thing tomorrow, and then do it. Our country is founded on the idea that we are independent and we can do it all, Superman, Superwoman. And that's not true. We all need help. We all need one another. And by building out your team, it will lessen that stress. Keep organized, stay in communication with your family. We've got all kinds of technology now that you can send a quick email out every day, every other day, a picture of your parent or your loved one. You can send that out and keep up with the family. Sometimes when family communication breaks down, it's because, oh, I didn't know that mom was at the emergency room on Sunday, and you're so overworked and tired, you forgot to tell them. So keeping them abreast, of what the changes are and what's going on, then it's not a sudden kind of thing for anybody, and you're all in it together then. And caregiving within a family can actually strengthen those family ties because you're working together as a team.
Right. Thank you.
And I think the other key to that, which we did with our family, everybody said, well, I'll help, but they never helped. So when they say I'll help, I say, what date are you available? What day works best for you? And then I made a calendar, and then everybody, I plugged everybody in. It's one thing to say it, but, once they have the commitment of a day or a date, that helps. Yes. The other thing, as far as the person you're caring for, I know here we pick our battles and we let them be as independent as possible with decision making when it doesn't really affect their well-being. So let them make the decision on where to get their hair done, when they want their hair done, those type of things, and what they're eating and so forth. So then when it comes down to having to help them with the bigger decisions, it's not as big a battle.
Good.
I would just like to say also, I think the stress for our family was, you hear so many stories about nursing facilities and certain facilities, and some of them are not true anymore, but you still think that in the back of your mind. And the fact that if you're able to see the person and be with the person regularly or on a scheduled time, I think that will relieve a lot of stress. I know a lot of people, when I come to see my mom, I'm up here 3 to 4 times. I live in Dayton, but I come 3 to 4 times a week to see her. And I just see some of the people here that don't have people coming to see them, and how they are reacting just to see me and say hello to me. So if you're out there, you're a caregiver and you have problems with people in a facility, make sure, if you can't go, have a friend go and see them, or, on a regular basis. And that'll help the person in the facility to really feel a lot better, because the feelings of being lonely and depressed are real, and it really makes a big difference.
That's a good point. Thank you. We do have a question in the chat. Vicki White asks, can a will be completed without the cost of an attorney?
Yes, you can always do that. It's a loaded question to ask that of an attorney. You also want to make sure that it's done correctly, because there are certain statutory requirements in how it's supposed to be witnessed and signed and witnessed. So that's my only word of caution on that. A simple will really shouldn't cost a whole lot, in my opinion. If you get too exotic and into trusts and too fancy, then yeah, it's going to add up a little bit. But a simple will should be basic, because if there is no will, then it falls on the court and the strata that the statute provides as to who gets what and how it's handled then, which happens. And it's usually meant to be for what people typically would want, but it adds more aggravation, time, and expense, and a simple will could probably avoid a lot of that. But yes, it can be done without an attorney, but as an attorney, I'm going to say talk to one. So.
Can you just give us a ballpark figure, if it's just like an average will, a standard will, what the cost would be? And then just kind of, I mean, again, just a ballpark figure. And then you had mentioned something about trust and things like that.
I know they're all over the page as far as what they should cost. If you just go in and say, here's what I want, and walk out and they do up the will, it's probably, you're only talking a couple hundred, if that. Lincoln says a lawyer's time is his money. So if you go in there and bend their ears for 2 hours, then it's going to cost more, because invariably you're probably covering a lot of different issues too in that time, which is good. As far as trust, I don't know if I want to get into that on this stage. I think people for this point of this should focus on making sure they have some sort of healthcare power of attorney, living will, and financial power of attorney in place with people they know, people that trust, and discuss it with the people you're naming in them, so they aren't surprised, and they know how you feel about things and how you want things to be handled. And just make put those simple things in place. And again, don't forget where they are. Review them periodically, but the financial power of attorney, it does give the person some broad powers, but they have to do what's in your best interest. By you, I'm meaning the person that's appointing, the maturing person. They can't line their pockets or do what's convenient just for them. They have to do what's for you, and it doesn't deprive you of the right to do things yourself either. Financial healthcare power of attorney, they can make healthcare decisions for you, but only if you're not able to do it yourself.
Right.
Living will just falls in, it comes into play with your terminally ill or permanently unconscious, and whether or not you want the medical people to take extraordinary measures to keep you going. So those are things to talk about with your family and make sure they understand how you feel.
Right. And I know we're talking about the more mature audience, but would you recommend a specific age to get a will?
Joan made an appointment under an assumed name when we were married only about 5 years to make sure we had one. Because for a will, if you're a young family, you have young kids, you want to make sure their things are provided for them, and that's
Right.
something that'll change as you age. And so again, there's no point in waiting till the accident happens or the dementia sets in. Do it so you have something in place, and then let them sit while you mature, and but look at them, make sure the person you've appointed is still a friend of yours or still within a few miles to help out if necessary. So no magic age, but better sooner than later.
Okay. So an upper middle-aged person, you would say. I'm not talking about anybody else, but
you should have one.
Yes, well, I do, but I'm just saying, so, I'm not mature, but I'm getting there. It's like we have another question in the chat. We hear a lot about older people being victimized by scams, often resulting in the loss of life savings. How are panelists helping their loved one from being victimized financially? That's a great question, Maureen Fagans. I'm just going to open it up to the entire panel.
Call the police, call the court if necessary, if they're being victimized because they've lost capacity to make wise decisions, and you do have a power of attorney in place, and that person may want to step in to the picture and start putting some controls on accounts with banks or whatnot. If you don't have those and this person is still being victimized and they can't do a power of attorney, then you might have to ask the court to appoint a guardian to take control. And guardianship in itself is not a bad thing, because you have the control of the court and overseeing everything is being used for the protection of the ward, the person that it belongs to. Michelle and Jane may have some thoughts on these too. I don't know.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Yes, I have thoughts. So at United Senior Services, we offer a lot of education programs on scams to help people be aware of even what is out there and what's going on. You just wouldn't believe it. I think our newspaper had an article in just this week about the sweetheart scams, and because it was around Valentine's Day. But, we also have scams with the banking system, and we're learning more and more about this as more and more agencies are mandated reporters now, and some of that is coming forward, because when someone's scammed, they're not necessarily going to be the one to seek advice because they're embarrassed and they're upset, and it's difficult for them to make that known. So then it kind of goes on to the caregiver to seek help. Andy had given a lot of really good examples. We have staff here at United Senior Services that are happy to meet with the family, meet with the person that might have been scammed, and kind of walk them through the steps to get it reported. But the bottom line is, like Andy said, if whatever we can prevent from happening at the very beginning is the best step. Rather than trying to recover afterwards. But at any point during a scam, before, during, or afterwards, we are here to meet with families and meet with your loved ones and help you through that.
Okay. Jane, real quick, does United Senior Services have a class in social media for older adults to kind of help them navigate that?
We have a lot of those types of programs through our SAIL, which is our older adult education program. So we have a new catalog coming out in another week or so. And yes. And we also have programming offered throughout the year, like through the Attorney General's office and things such as that. So watch our center page, watch our emails, and if you don't find it, give us a call and we'll tell you when the next classes are.
Great.
Thank you, Nettie.
No problem. Were you going to say something, Mr. Kitchen?
Well, I was going to say that I think in terms of the process of watching my mother's situation, I took a very active role in some of the financial oversight, even before we got involved with some trust and other things. But in the very early stages, I know the one thing I began to notice is that there were some very legitimate organizations and charities who would call, and they were good charities that she supported for many years. But I recognized that these weren't annual gifts. These became maybe every 6 months or every 3 months. And there was a lot of redundancy. We began to have that conversation. And I do think that there was a little bit of an advantage that they were trying to play into her circumstances, but it wasn't serious. The other thing that I also noticed, and this was to my disadvantage, is that caller ID is extremely helpful. In terms of trying to shepherd the process of understanding who's calling and so forth. The thing that didn't work well for me is that she does not like clutter. She's very organized and very neat in how she approaches her lifestyle. So what would happen at the end of every day, she would clear all of the caller ID identification. So I would go in the evening and I'd look at the phone and she says, "Oh, okay, you just checking that out?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "It's all empty." She says, "Oh, well, yes, I had to clear that. I had a number of calls and I like to keep that clear." And I even put a little sign by the phone, "Please don't clear the phone," but it never really quite worked. But caller ID could be an advantage, but it wasn't for me.
Right. Sounds like my grandma. Sounds just like her. One quick question, and we're going to wrap it up, but okay, Andy's typing the answer. Great. So we just have a few minutes, and I wanted to ask each panelist if you could leave the audience with one nugget, what would that be? What would it be? And I'm going to start with Michelle because she's the first person in my top left.
I think what it would be is research, research, research. There's always somebody out there to help you, and United Senior Services is a great resource. All the facilities in town are great resources. The Community Health Foundation resource book is wonderful, but always check your resources before you do anything with your insurance, with whatever it may be that you need help with. Just make sure you do your research and know that there's somebody out there that can help you.
Great, thank you. Jane?
Thank you. My word of advice is as a caregiver to a caregiver is take care of yourself. Do something each day that you enjoy so that you can get that a little bit of that off of your shoulders for even a short period of time. And that prepares you then for the long run of caregiving. Just some self-care. I also wanted to mention that Clark County is blessed with having a warm line. It's free 24/7, 937-662-9080. It's on the resource page that you can call day and night if you need help or you need assistance or you need someone to talk to. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah and Daryl?
I would say I'm going to put two things together. I think that whether you're caring for others or for yourself or for your family in general, I think the two abiding factors, I think, live with faith and live with purpose.
That's good, Dad. That's good.
That's good.
Yeah, that is
real
good. I think my nugget would be not to wait to get involved or find out what resources to kind of talk, what Michelle said. I even think of our youth, with working with Springfield City School District, having our youth be involved and to know the resources that are available at United Senior Service. It's great. They've allowed some of our students to volunteer. Village of Springfield has allowed our students to volunteer. It opens up for our younger generation to see those resources that are available, because guess what? They're going to be the ones kind of helping, with those decisions. So it's so crucial for our youth to be involved and to be able to assist and just know the great opportunities and things that are here in Clark County. So.
Thank you so much. Mike and Mrs. Marshall, bring us home.
One piece of advice I'd like to say to both caregivers and to others, the elderly, is don't be afraid of change. We all are afraid of change, and this is a big step in a lot of people's lives, but you have to adapt to it and not to be afraid. As you've heard, there's so many options out there to explore and so much more help now than what it used to be. But don't be afraid to change, because I think in the long run, it will really help you and whoever you're taking care of to live a long and longer life.
Thanks. Mrs. Marshall?
I think that's what awesome, aging with awesome is. Aging without fear, because you have so many helpers here, your caregivers and your friends and family.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Joan?
I think what I take away from this is really just to start early. It's never too early to start planning, and make sure that you can state your own wishes so that that power doesn't get taken away from you when you're no longer able.
Okay, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you. Well, I think that we can wrap up. There should be a screen in front of you right now with panelist contact information. And this video, I don't know if I mentioned, but it was recorded, so you can access it through the Community Health Foundation website if there's anything that was said, or if you need to go back to any of these resource pages. But right here we have the individuals, those service providers who spoke with us today. Their names and contact information is on this slide. So they've all given permission to share this. So they won't be surprised if anyone from this conversation reaches out for some more, personal questions. The Community Health Foundation Resource Guide has been referenced a couple of times today. Thank you very much. The cover, there's a new cover. We have a guide that is newer than the one that's pictured here, but it's available by contacting CHF. We can mail it to you, or you can also go online. We have all the resources available online as well. Then we also, of course, have the 211 line from United Way. That's a good place to call just to get started. And they will refer you on to one of these other sources, such as United Senior Services. As Jane mentioned, the Warm Line, which provides support peer-to-peer. So that's awesome. And thank you for listing the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline too, Jane. When people, I don't know if this is still an accurate statistic, but it had been that the largest number of suicides occurred in men over the age of 50. And so it's a matter of just that depression and mindset. And so make sure that everybody knows that that's a number to call if you're concerned about a loved one, or if you're feeling really desperate yourself. So 988 is that number. And I just want to mention again, this is our final Break for Health session, unless we get lots of people like emailing and saying, please do this more. But we've wrapped up 2 fantastic years with lots of great sessions. I appreciate my partners, Nettie and Alex, all that you've done, and everybody else on the team here at CHF who helps us come up with topics, come up with some of the prepared questions so everybody can feel as if they are playing a part in this. And I know that this is not the last time we're going to see all of you. We have an event coming up. Would love to ask all of you to register for our annual reception called CHF Celebrates on March 28th. If you don't want to type in that whole Eventbrite link, just call our office at 523-7002 and we can make a reservation for you. So again, thank you so much. I'm sure that I will see all of you who are on the panel down the road and in the future. And I'm sure I'll see many of you who joined us as an attendee. Thank you for your attention. You will be getting a survey after we log off of here, and that will also direct you to the recorded session that's on our website. So thanks. I'll give you back the rest of your afternoon. Go out, enjoy your lunch, and have a great afternoon. Enjoy the weather too. Goodbye.